We all know what a bad money decision feels like, a foolish purchase, a missed investment. But what does the worst one in all of history look like? You might think of a stock market crash or a failed business venture. Honestly, those are just drops in the ocean. The worst decision wouldn't just bankrupt a person, it would reshape the world. And it wasn't made by a banker or a trader. It was made by an emperor. In a single moment, he set a catastrophe in motion. A catastrophe that would last for centuries. You see, for most of human history, money was simple. It was gold. It was silver. It had real tangible value. You couldn't just create more of it. Then came the Roman Empire at its peak. It was unimaginably wealthy. The treasury was overflowing, but that wealth wasn't infinite. Empires are expensive. Legions need pay. Roads need building. Grain needs to be bought for the people. So what do when the bills come due? You look at your treasure, and you get an idea, a very, very bad idea. What if you could make your silver coins go further? What if you mixed in something cheaper? The empire had mountains of silver, but it also had plenty of base metals, like copper. The thinking was seductively simple. Dilute the silver with copper, stamp it with the same emperor's face, and spend it as if it's just as valuable. Who would know? They would all know, because you can't hide the truth of metal. A pure silver coin rings with a clear, high tone. A debased coin sounds dull. It feels lighter. It looks paler. But the order came from the top, so the mint started producing them. Millions and millions of these new coins. They poured into the economy, to pay soldiers, to buy supplies, to fund grand projects. At first, nothing seemed wrong. Commerce buzzed along. The treasury could pay for everything. But then a quiet realization spread. A merchant would weigh a coin in his hand. He'd listen to its sound, and he'd think. He wasn't getting real silver anymore. So what did he do next? He raised his prices. If the coin is only half as good, he'd need twice as many. That's inflation. And it was just the beginning. This wasn't a slow creep of inflation. It was a silent gathering force. And the Roman state had a simple, terrible solution. They debased the coinage again. If a 50% silver coin caused prices to rise, they'd drop it to 40%, then 30%. The treasury needed more coins to pay for the same things. So they made more. But each new batch was worse than the last. You know how this ends, don't you? Trust is a fragile thing. When people lose faith in the money itself, everything starts to unravel. Soldiers demanded pay in old pure coins or in kind. Merchants began hoarding good metal. The government responded with force. They decreed the new coins had to be accepted at full value. But you can't legislate value. Not really. The market always finds a way. Barter returned for large transactions. Goods were traded for goods, bypassing coins entirely. The economy was fracturing. And the emperors? They were trapped. They couldn't stop. Stopping meant admitting the money was worthless. It meant the army wouldn't get paid. So the minting presses, powered by slaves, just kept running. Coins became little more than silver-plated copper. Then just copper with a faint memory of silver. By the 3rd century, the denarius, once pure silver, was less than 5%. It was basically a token, a piece of metal with a famous face on it. But what does this have to do with us? Why does a Roman coin matter? Because this wasn't just an economic mistake. It was a fatal wound. The Roman state was funded by this illusion. When the illusion shattered, the state's power bled away. It couldn't pay for frontier defenses properly. It couldn't ensure a stable food supply for Rome. Social contracts dissolved. Why be loyal to a distant power that pays you in junk? Local generals and warlords gained power. They controlled real assets, land, grain. Loyal troops paid in real goods. The empire began to cannibalize itself. And here's the crucial point. This wasn't a sudden collapse. It was a slow rot. A rot that took 2 centuries to fully consume the Western Empire. Year after year, the money got worse. Decision after decision reinforced the first terrible choice. It created a world where trust in central authority evaporated. So, was it the worst money decision? Look at the scale. It didn't just bankrupt an emperor. It systematically bankrupted an entire civilization's system of trust. It turned the most sophisticated economy on Earth into a patchwork of barter and local power. But to find the real impact, we have to look at the people, the ordinary people who lived through the long decay. Imagine you're a baker in a Roman city. Your family has baked bread for generations. You accept coins for your loaves. One day a customer pays with a new coin. It looks right, but it feels wrong. You weigh it. It's light. What choice do you have? You need to feed your own family. So tomorrow, the price of bread goes up. Not because wheat is scarce, but because the money is. Now imagine you're a soldier stationed on the Rhine frontier. Your pay arrives. The purse is full, but the coins are pale and thin. You try to send some home to your family, but the merchant in your village won't accept them at face value. Your sacrifice, your service, is paid in bad metal. Where does your loyalty lie then? Perhaps with the local commander who can pay in grain or land. This decay touched everyone, from the richest senator to the poorest farmer. The government demanded taxes, of course. But here's the brutal twist. They often demanded taxes in pure silver or gold, or in actual goods, so they spent out-debased coins but demanded real value back. It was a massive, systemic theft from the people. The gap between the rich and poor became a chasm. Those with land, with gold hoarded from the past, were insulated. Everyone else was squeezed. Trade over long distances, the lifeblood of the empire, became a gamble. How could you agree on a price from Rome to Alexandria? If the currency was unreliable, you couldn't. Markets shrank, economies localized. The world got smaller and more dangerous. Cities began to decay. Why live in a city if you can't reliably buy and sell? People moved to the countryside, nearer to food sources. This was the grim, daily reality of the monetary collapse. But the decision's poison had another, deeper effect. It corrupted the very idea of value itself. When the state's promise on a coin is meaningless, what promise holds weight? The social fabric frayed. So, was this the absolute worst? It's a strong contender. But to judge, we have to look at the aftermath, we have to see what the world lost, and we have to ask a difficult question: could it have been stopped, or was the first small dilution a point of no return? Let's pause for a moment. Could it have been stopped? Honestly, yes. At any point, an emperor could have halted the debasement. He could have recalled the bad coins, minted new, pure ones, even if there were fewer. It would have meant brutal, short-term pain, tax hikes, spending cuts, maybe even civil unrest. But it would have preserved the currency's trust for another century. The decision to continue was always easier. It was always about the next year, the next crisis, the next legion's pay. The path of least resistance became a road to ruin, and the ruin was profound. When the Western Roman Empire finally fragmented, it wasn't just a political change. The economic system was obliterated. Europe plunged into what we call the Dark Ages. Trade collapsed on a continental scale. The sophisticated Roman financial world vanished. Money itself didn't disappear, but it regressed. Gold and silver coins became rare, used mostly by the very elite. For everyone else, it was back to barter, a chicken for a pot, a day's labor for a sack of grain. The concept of a unified, trusted currency across a vast region was gone for nearly 500 years. Think about that scale, half a millennium of economic fragmentation. That single policy choice helped erase centuries of economic progress. It made recovery infinitely harder. Now, you might argue, you might say empires fall for many reasons: invasions, corruption, plagues, and you'd be right. But those are events. A failing currency is a process. It weakens the body so the disease can kill it. It made the empire unable to respond to those other crises. A broke state can't raise loyal armies. It can't build walls. It can't buy alliances. So, where does this leave us? Is the Roman debasement the undisputed champion of bad money decisions? It has to be a finalist. But to crown it, we should briefly look at other contenders, not to revisit old ground, but to measure the scale. What else could possibly compete? So, what else is there? History is full of financial disasters. There's the hyperinflation in Weimar Germany. Banknotes printed so fast, they became wallpaper. That was catastrophic, but it lasted about a decade. Then it was over. There's the Spanish pouring New World silver into their economy. That caused rampant inflation, yes. But it didn't collapse their entire concept of money. The French Mississippi bubble? A speculative mania that ruined thousands. But it was a single event. The Roman debasement was different. It was a deliberate institutional policy, sustained for generations. It wasn't a market panic or a speculative fever. It was a slow, administrative rot. It targeted the very foundation of daily life, the coin in your hand. And its effects weren't contained. They rippled across time, shaping the next era of human history. It didn't just create poverty, it created a poverty of systems, of trust, of possibilities. That's the key difference. The worst money decision isn't just about the sum lost, it's about the future that was closed off, the progress that was reversed. By that measure, Rome's choice stands alone. But let's be clear. The emperors who did this weren't cartoon villains. They were men facing impossible pressures. They chose the solution that bought them another day, another year. They just never found a way to stop choosing it. And that's the real lesson. A bad money decision is rarely one big, obvious mistake. It's a series of small, reasonable compromises. Each one makes the next one easier, until there's no way back. Until the sound of a good coin is forgotten. So, have we found our answer? Perhaps. But a final question lingers. One that brings this out of the history books. Could something like this happen again? We don't use gold coins anymore. Our money is digital, abstract. A promise on a screen. Is that better, or is it just more fragile? Is our modern money more fragile? That's the haunting question. Today, a coin's value isn't in its metal. It's in our collective faith. Faith in governments and central banks, in systems so complex, few truly understand them. The Romans broke faith by degrading the physical object. How do you break faith in a number? through hyperinflation maybe, or through a loss of credibility so profound that the promise itself crumbles. We've seen glimpses, but never a collapse so total, so enduring as Rome's. Their decision set a precedent, a warning etched not in stone, but in economic rubble. It showed that you can't fake value forever. Markets, people, they eventually see the truth. So, was it the worst? It's hard to imagine a candidate with a longer shadow. A choice that didn't just crash an economy, but dismantled a world. It forged a darker age. That's the ultimate cost. Not just wealth lost, but light lost. Progress halted for centuries. The next time you hold a coin, or tap your phone to pay, think about that. Think about the promise behind it, and how delicate that promise really is. The worst money decision in history wasn't about greed or stupidity alone. It was about the slow, quiet erosion of a fundamental truth. That money is a shared illusion. And when the illusion is managed with deceit, everything it holds up begins to fall. The Roman denarius fell first. Then the roads grew quiet. The cities shrank. The lights of the empire guttered out one by one. All fueled in part by a decision that seemed so financially clever, so practical, so catastrophically wrong.